Welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and today's car finally is the Lotus Emira i4, the 4-cylinder version with the AMG engine, the turbocharged engine, 360 horsepower, 430 Newton meters of torque, 10 Newton meters more than my V6 version. Now, if you're a regular viewer of Harry's Garage, you will know I have done numerous videos on my own Lotus Emira that arrived in November 22. I've done about 4,500 miles in it. As you know, I've been into Europe, etc. So it's a car I've got to know very well. And so it's with great anticipation that the i4 is here. And I've spent a few days driving it, and I'm going to compare the two, what I've discovered, the difference in character between the two cars. I'm not going to do a deep dive on all the interior and that sort of thing. If you want to know more about Emira, I'll put a video on mine up there, because it is basically identical apart from two key areas. Firstly, obviously, 4-cylinder turbocharged engine versus supercharged V6. And secondly, the i4 version only comes with a dual clutch transmission. There is no manual option. And having lived with them, they are very different cars to drive. Just have a quick closer look. Now, another surprise was when this press car, I picked it up from Lotus, in fact. I'd travelled up to Heffel, and sitting outside the security office was that car. It was like, hey, that's the same spec as mine. The difference between the two, they're both Nimbus grey colour, exterior colour. The i4 has a red interior, and it's very obvious from behind when you see the difference in the engine, which we'll get to in a moment. And the only other clue I can see that there's difference between the two is my V6 does not have a radiator sitting in that pod there, while this one does. There's an oil cooler sitting in that duct, but this one has an additional radiator in there. But you have to be particularly geeky to spot that. But visually, I cannot see any other difference. When we go around the rear, there is obviously the way they presented the engine is completely different. Mine has yellow calipers, and the press car has the red calipers on the i4. But yeah, it's fun actually having the two here and seeing how the colour, it is a particular favourite of mine. And with the i4, you get a much greater range of colours. I think there's 13 colours. When I was choosing mine, it was a very limited palette we were choosing from. But the big difference is when you come round the back and you see the engine. On the V6, there's a nice engine cover. It's actually over the supercharger over there. V6 looks very mechanical. On this one, you just get the plastic cover saying Lotus. Now, I saw this at launch when July 21, when I went up to Heffel to see the world premiere of the car, and I thought, oh, they're just covering it up before they actually display the engine. It won't be like that in production. Yeah, it is in production, and you just get a completely covered engine compartment. I'll show you what's underneath later. Only other difference I've noticed is underneath, when you're following this car, there's a funny little aluminium flap, which I think is a air intake, which might be something to do with being turbocharged. But yeah, they are identical. There's no badging outside to tell you V6 or i4, just identical. During the wait for the i4 to arrive, there's been a significant move in price. When we were at that launch, the promise was the i4 range was going to start at $59,995. And as you know, if you've been following the Lotus Emira story, it didn't quite come to be at that price. This car is the first edition version of i4. They declare the price is $81,495, significantly more than was initially envisaged for i4. And I also just ought to add that having bought mine, that is not on the road price. It's the price before extras and road fund license, that sort of thing. This car with road fund license and delivery is £84,215. Quite a lot more, isn't it? Once you add those things on. It does have a lower CO2 rating, so the road fund license on this is £1,500. When it's on the V6, it's £2,600. So if you buy a V6 now, on the road price is £89,755. Near as damn it £90,000. When I ordered mine, the promise price was £75,995. Sorry for all the numbers, but basically it's been a £10,000 rise from that. The V6 is now priced at £85,995. There you go, that's the pricing. Let's have a quick look at the engine. Right, this cover is removable if you know how. I'm not going to show that, but there we go. That's what is hiding underneath the cover. You can see why they put a cover it, the big turbo here, so that I suspect it's going to get quite warm around here. We'll see in practice. I haven't noticed it. ECU sits up there, the 4-cylinder sat there, and this here is a great big fan. There's a big fan in, you probably can't see under these lights, but that is pumping air over here, and you can see there's a sort of temperature on the turbo, so it's always sensing the heat underneath here. But that is what the AMG engine looks like when you take the cover off, and you can quite understand why they put a cover over it. Right, so what I'm going to do now is actually put the cover back on and then take both cars outside, and what's going to happen is my son Charlie is going to help out. So we're going to have both cars side by side, and then we'll swap cars and discuss our findings between the car, because Charlie has driven my Emira quite a lot, and I think it'd be quite useful to get a younger owner, potential owner, view on this car as well as mine. So let's head outside and see how they drive. Right, the first thing that strikes you is the different gear lever in the i4, obviously because it's dual clutch transmission. And to get into drive, so I'm in park, just started it, you think you just do that, but you actually get neutral and you have to do it again and then you get first. It's a bit annoying why it isn't in one plane, you just put it back to go into drive. No, it's always two pulls. And the same thing happens when you're selecting reverse. You have to go through neutral and then into reverse. I don't really understand the reasons for doing that. But anyway, let's get going. And I don't know if the mic's picking that up, but it was a very definite turbo whistle. You're very definitely aware that there's a turbocharger operating on the 4-cylinder AMG engine in the back. And I was surprised how pronounced it was. When I first picked it up from Heffel, it was the first thing I noticed. And it builds boost from very low RPM, and the 8-speed gearbox goes through the gears, and it's very low geared. I think first is good for about 30, seconds 50, and yeah, you need third to get to 70. That's very low geared, so it's very quick through the initial gears. Relatively quiet in here, measured it, I think it's 74, 75 decibels, I'll flash it up. But ease of use is straight away is the thing you notice with this car compared to the manual and changing gears. It's no effort changing gear, but that's the instant feel when you get in the Emira i4. One of the advantages of having the dual clutch transmission is actually a big sort of parcel shelf underneath here. I've automatically put my phone under the slot in the dash there, but I suppose I ought to sit it down there, and there is a little USB plug down there as well, so that's a natural place. You don't get that lit of a gear change mechanism that you get on the V6 with the i4, but it does give you an extra bit of space. And that's the one thing with the Emira I have really liked over the time I've had it, is just the practicality of this car. Great big bins everywhere. The space behind the seats is so useful, but it is very easy to live with, and the CarPlay instantly connects, wireless. I cannot get over the bits that you don't expect a Lotus to be good at are really good on the Emira. Great quality in the interior, no different in here. Not sure about the red, it's sort of quite nice. It's a fun car, so why not have a fun interior, I suppose. And the dash readout I also really like. The display, all within the wheel, and see revs, love the change up lights, got the tire pressures on. Now I'm going to take it out to drive mode. It sets off in tour just like the V6 does. I'm going to select Sport on here, and you can see on there the difference, a bit more exhaust. Powertrain is also changed. You can hear it suddenly energise the revs. So I'm doing 30, I'm going to squirt it up the hill. I can see Charlie's in the mirrors as well. Right, here we go, automatic mode. And yeah, not slow, very close on performance between the two. We had them side by side, bringing them out, very marginal which is quicker. There's a top end rush to the V6, but the torque of the i4, just once that's boosted at 3000, then you have the torque accelerates you initially away, but you've got to be in the right gear at the right time. And I did try a launch out of here, and I tried to do it in manual mode, and I just couldn't keep up with the gear changes, and there's a lag, I think, in how I'm just going to put it down to tour just to calm it down. There's a lag in the display to change gear, so I was bumping into the limiter even though I thought I was changing gear before the said shift. So I have it in auto mode and it bangs the gears in. Into manual mode, I slide this across. I'm now in manual fourth, and I use the paddles on the steering wheel. It seems so odd. So going on the third little blip, and I can chuck it in here, and it's just there's a more neutral feel to the handling. You can sort of take limiters. I did that video describing how the weight distribution on the Emira is very 911 like. It's sort of the same with the i4 as well as the V6. There's no real difference in the weight distribution, but what is different is the weight is lower down on the i4 because the weight is in the dual clutch transmission, which is low, and the fact it's a 4-cylinder rather than the V6, just the design of the engine with a V6 with a supercharger on top means the weight is a bit higher up in the V6, so that does feel different. Down here, steering just the same. I think it's terrific. It's busy. If you come out of a normal car, you describe it as busy. To me, it's direct. It keeps me connected to the car, so I like that as well. It's quite interesting the way the boost builds. I'm going to put that into fifth gear, 1500 revs. No performance off boost, but it starts to swell. 2000 is a bit ago, 3000 and we're away. Loads of boost there. And through this bump, good control. It's Tour chassis, this one. It's exactly the same as mine, and you can no longer get Cup 2s with Tour chassis. And it's just through here, this just feels a little bit more planted. Yeah, I think I would be quicker in the i4 than the V6. If you put it on track, just because the accessibility, the quick gear changes, and I think the lower centre of gravity, I suspect, I have no figures on it, I can only describe what I'm feeling from behind the wheel. The sound is very definitely turbocharged. It's a completely different sound to V6. It's very dominant. Oh, look at these Porsches coming through here. This must be some rally. Let's try it around here. Third gear around here, I think. Boots out. I mean, he's quick. I keep saying it, but you are not. Don't forget about 360 horsepower versus 400 horsepower. It's that deep well of torque that fires you out corners rather than the top end sparkle 400 horsepower right at the top of the revs. The sound though, it's 4-cylinder, isn't it? And there's no getting away from it. The V6 has a howl to it, and I like the instant throttle response from it as well. It sounds a bit more exciting. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to get Charlie in the car, and then I'll be interested, what he thinks of the car, and he's driven the V6 Emira quite a lot, and he's had a good go in this one as well. Well, thanks for joining me, Charlie.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Don't you worry.
Yeah, and you've had a proper go in this, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done our road a few times.
Yeah.
And yeah, first impressions.
Yeah.
It is different.
It is very different. There's a funny noise, isn't there?
Well, that was well, I've just taken the V6 up here, and that was the first thing I've noticed. Is I asked you, "What's that noise?"
Yeah.
Do you know what the noise is?
Well, I don't know if the microphone is actually picking it up, but it's that fan, which is literally just behind the bulkhead there. And if you open the door, actually, you can hear it in that intake.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
sucking away.
Yeah, there's a sort of intake there, the air intake, and that's obviously where the fan comes from. And it's just accompanies you with the i4. As soon as you turn off, you just hear it whirling away, and it goes on for quite a while. It's the same with quite a few cars with those hot Vs, you know, the turbos. They're all the same. But yeah, this one has to do it as well.
Did you check the tyre pressures?
I did. I reduced the tyre pressures so they are matched between the two now. There's two tyre settings on Emira depending on what speed you're driving at. So high speed gets a higher pressure rating. I didn't think that was really necessary. I was going to turn the fan down a bit.
So where are we going? What are we doing?
We're heading down here, and I just want to do the sort of summary, the likes and dislikes with the two cars. And yeah, I think as ever I always start with the dislikes. There are a number of grumbles. I think the gear change annoys me, that I have to go through neutral to get to drive or reverse.
It's not logical, really.
Not. And every other dual clutch transmission car, well, majority, you can just touch a positive paddle and you're straight into first gear and you're off. And I didn't realise how much I liked how you select reverse with a button on quite a few Ferraris and that sort of thing. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, it was a bit weird. I'm glad I watched you do it for the first time, otherwise I think I might have been sitting there for a while, sort of wondering why it wasn't going into reverse.
Yeah.
And how on sort of dual clutch cars, you get the almost manual mode on the gear knob.
Yes.
And that's side to side on here. It's how you go up and down the gears.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
I don't understand it. It's not intuitive to me how you get on with the paddles on the wheel.
They're in a bit of a weird place. Slightly lower down than I would have wanted them, and there's the feedback as well is a bit rubbish. They're squashy. There's no sort of positive. There's no positive click or something like that. You sort of don't quite know if you have changed gear or not.
Yeah, so that's another negative for me. I'm not feeling as connected as I was in the V6 manual. That you instantly feel I'm in a driver's car. It's for the drivers. They're all shouting back at Lotus, and yet with this dual clutch transmission, I feel I've lost that connection slightly. And the same with the turbocharged engine.
The gearbox mapping has been a bit weird at times. Did you find that?
I did. I had two instances in Milton Keynes when I picked it up, and it hesitated on the roundabout. When I just get used to its punch, and then you think, oh, it's just going to move away from this roundabout, and I just sat there like dithered, saying, oh, maybe I should be in first rather than second. Oh, I ought to add some boost. Meanwhile, I'm just sat there, and I didn't really like that. So yeah,
I've had a weird one coming through. I think it was the first time I drove it, and I was in auto the whole way, sport on the drive mode.
Yeah.
And coming into the trees over there, I downshifted. And it immediately downshifted again and sort of was up at the red line. And I went, this is bizarre. Like I haven't sort of decelerated too quickly to, like with a PDK or something, I know that they can be, you flick it into Sport Plus and it gets quite aggressive.
So you were in Sport, were you?
I was in Sport.
Yeah. No, I find Sport overly aggressive. And that's something. The other thing I don't like, the driver modes. I now want to be able to set them individually, and I can't. I'm stuck with them. Because it makes such a change to the gearbox that I sort of want the better noise and perhaps a freer stability control, but they all come with this annoying gearbox map, so you then go into manual mode, I found, while again in the V6 I just use them all the time.
The noise, the sort of constant, if you are accelerating, it's a slightly annoying turbo whoosh on the intake.
There's no doubt in its turbocharged.
Absolutely none at all.
Because you also get the baggy response and you get the sound. It's a very turbocharged car.
Did you have a gripe with the turbo, like the power delivery?
No, well, once it's boost, and because you've got, you know, the dual clutch in, you can go through the gears and you're in boost. And you know, if we move on to the positives, it's a quick car, isn't it?
Yeah.
Compared to V6 that you have to work harder at, it's more accessible. So that is a real positive, I think.
One of those boosted engines that 90% of torque is available at sort of lower RPM.
Yeah.
With the V6, it does feel everything is all at the top and it all sparkles up there and it's all lovely. But then you look down and think, can't really go I can't do speeds. I can't sustain this. This is not. It sparkles once it starts to get illegal. And you
Yes.
go, well, this is a bit.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this.
I think we're sort of going into conclusions here. Difference between the two, which the positives are the accessible performance, and I mentioned handling. You have that feeling as well, don't you?
I definitely think it handles better, like marginally. I'm not saying one is terrible and one is great. I'm saying they both handle really, really well, but one is I would say this i4 is slightly better. You think it's tyre pressures. We had this discussion yesterday.
Yeah.
I think that the V6 does feel heavy. You do feel that mass.
And I actually mentioned that as well, and also the fact that the dual clutch transmission is a heavy component, and that's right down low.
Yeah.
So I am sure that the centre of gravity is lower in this car than the V6.
I don't feel any difference in weight at the end of the day, if you feel weight, they both handle well. One's just relatively slightly better than the other. I don't feel any weight difference under braking, and then acceleration, like under acceleration, it's hard to tell the difference because one is a supercharged V6 and one is a very old school turbo laggy boosted inline four. So they have their power deliveries in different ways. So you can't really tell one's got more shove than the other.
No, but they're both quick cars. I just think 4.5 speed is a very sweet spot for real on-road use, you know, everyday use.
I like how easy and user-friendly it is.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I know people are going to grumble about the fact that it is a dual clutch gearbox, but going through town standstill traffic on weekends and things like that, I imagine M25, it's quite nice in an auto. That's just like a general auto versus manual argument. The same things will come up again.
I've taken my V6 into London. It became a bit of a pain after a while being manual. And there's another positive, I think, with this car. Amazing MPG.
Yeah, you were saying, weren't you, on your way back?
Couldn't get over. Heffel to home, 38 MPG until I got to my bits of road, and I did up and down my bits of road, but it still only dropped about 34. You will always be in the 30s this car. Same size tank as V6, so you've got that much more range. You've got 400 mile plus range in this, while 300 is touch and go in the V6, and 25 mpg average, I think, over 5,000 miles. So yeah, dramatically better on fuel than this Ford. Is a big positive for running costs.
What else do you like about this?
I would say it feels Lotus. You know?
Yeah, but the other one did as well.
Yeah.
It's not saying one's more Lotusy than the other.
They're both really pretty cars.
Yeah. I do like how this does have feelings of old school turbo. I do like how power delivery of this does feel like your HC.
RS3,
because you go into a world of turbocharged cars now and everything is instant torque. They don't feel turboed anymore, and I like how there is still a bit of theatre when it comes to power delivery of this.
So with this being 81,495 and the V6 being 85,995, which one are you choosing? i4 V6?
Oh, again, it depends. If it's going to be your one and only, if you said, Charlie, right, you can have one and it has to be your car, I'd take the i4.
Okay.
I think I'd get less annoyed with it over time.
Right.
Sort of, because that, at the end of the day, the gearbox mapping could just be a software update or something like that, and that could be cured.
Okay.
I think the V6 is a luxury. It is like when you went to the Swiss Alps and down to Italy and things like that. It is one of those cars that you do get more driver involvement, and roaring up those alpine passes with a V6, that's sort of what it's made for. But if you were doing your daily commute and it involved miles and sort of things that you sort of care about on a more day-to-day basis, like putting fuel in your car all the time, then I think this i4 is probably my choice. You?
Me, for how I use the car, V6.
Yeah, well, it suits. It's not your only thing.
It's not my only car. I think there's an excitement factor, the connected factor with the V6, and I really enjoy it. And I admire this car, but it feels a little bit me too. Dual clutch, turbo 4. I'm next to, Alpine A110 or something. It's very similar.
I was going to say, I don't think there is any point comparing this car to A110.
Because?
That car is totally different. That is what I would describe as a palate cleanser car. This is not a sort of 1,000 kilo.
No, but I when it's mid-engine, it's pretty, it's distinct. It's an enthusiast car. It's made for driving the same as this. There's Cayman S, we forget, is also a 4-cylinder turbocharged
that is more.
car. And we have to also remember that car with dual clutch transmission is about £64,000, 64 and a half. It's quite a discount.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to pay a few more for extras, but this feels quite expensive for what it is. You're paying for that Lotus badge, and I feel that the V6 is unique. It's only Lotus does a supercharged V6 manual mid-engine car, and that's why I bought it. I love how they're both so similar. You can't tell from the outside. You don't feel shortchanged by an i4. It's just as pretty as the V6 as well, but I'm still a bit disappointed that it weighs the same. There's 12 kilos between the two, and I wish it was a bit more of a price difference gap between the two.
That is the big difference, isn't
it? And I know the running costs are lower and all the rest of it, but it's still not quite the promise I hoped for when i4 was launched. So that's where I am. Thank you very much, Charlie. It's good to share.
I'm not a journalist. I'm just lucky enough to have driven a few cars.
An awful lot of cars. And there you go. That's our review of the Amira i4. I hope that gave you a better idea how it fits next to V6 and where it is in the market. If you did enjoy the video, well, keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming along very soon.